Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the penultimate session of Day 4 of eFrames 2020. The session is titled Taking Indian Content to Global Markets. To tell us more, I'd like to invite our moderator, Mr. Stephan Ottenbruch, Festival Director, Indo-German Film Festival. Stephan, the platform is all yours.
Yeah, hello everybody and a very warm welcome to everybody who's joining our panel on taking Indian content to global markets. A big thank you to our esteemed panelists for being part of this and sharing your experience and your knowledge. My name is Stephan Ottenbruch. I'm CEO of Indian German Films and Festival Director of Indo-German Film Week in Berlin, Germany. We are here to explore the question of what might become a game changer to bring more Indian content to global markets. And I would like to introduce our panelists coming along with my first question. Ladies first, Gunit. Gunit Monga. Hi, Gunit. Gunit Monga has been conferred with the Most Powerful Women in Indian Business Award by Business Today in 2014. This year, Gunit has been acclaimed as Producer of the Year at the GQ Awards. Just to name a few films from her long credit list as a very successful producer, Gangs of Wasseypur, Lunchbox, and Masan. Gunit, what have been your learnings from bringing your films to global markets? And when it comes to festival strategies for independent films, what are the most important rules to follow if you want to go global with your film projects? I mean, from the starting point, the development and the design of a movie, until the very end and selling the film to buyers from all over the world.
Thank you, Stephan and Vicky, for having me here. I'm really happy to be here virtually making this happen and with this amazing panel. So I think to start with, to your question, the answer would be divided in three buckets for me. One is, like you said, from day one, how do you design the film? So I think the financing structure also defines that. I mean, if it's a movie that is a co-production, then you also tap into the resources and the contacts of your co-producer when you bring the film to an audience when it's finished, or you open it up from labs, you take it step by step and, start including more and more partners and visibility for the project from the very start, from the script. It's also the story. If the story has the legs that can travel, that is universal, and the style of storytelling, there is a particular formula that Bollywood has, and it works here. It works for large films. It works in this particular market. But the minute you're trying to go away from that and being a more global storyteller, there is a certain style of storytelling that the filmmaker chooses to tell, which can be global. So I think it starts from the very start on how are we planning to make this film. There are some films with songs and dances which do not track. And there are some films with songs and dances that do track, like Devdas, So I think to see what is the visual language of the film and how is this story being structured. Lunchbox has been that incredible movie that has traveled far and wide. It was also structured as an Indo-French co-production with also Sundance backing the script, with also several labs around the world and, people, and also with Ritesh's background. So it is a film that broke barriers. Whereas Gangs of Wasseypur got discovered when the film festival happened at Cannes. It was not really structured as a co-production, but it really broke out. Whereas again, Masan was structured as a co-production. So, one can say that yes, co-productions play a huge role when you're trying to target a global audiences. You get more producers, their backgrounds as a part of the project. But it's also as a producer, as the lead producer, to decide if the story will travel and if this can have the legs of connecting globally at a script level. And the sooner you expose the film, a large part of Indian filmmakers, they do feel like we'll finish the film and then go to festivals. I think that is a mistake that people make. You have to start talking about it early. You have to expose it early. You have to be in conversation with sales agents, with buyers, and be available at markets to even launch the film, at co-production markets and at larger festival markets. So it's an ecosystem that you tap into. So, it's a bit of a long answer, but it is it is something that you step in from the day one, consciously.
Mm. Okay, understand. Colin, you have been not only a very successful producer in London, in UK. You have worked as an independent producer, as a publicity consultant, and CEO of Special Treats production company, which is Europe's leading production house for audiovisual coverage of for the film industry. And but you also work on international co-productions, or with a special interest also on Indian productions. So, for example, with your company Beautiful Bay Entertainment, your film Bombay, Bombay has been released by Sony Pictures in January last year and is currently screening on Netflix. So, what do you think, giving what Gunit has said, what do you think, what can be a game changer for Indian film industry to become more relevant on the international map?
I had a long answer to that. You'll be pleased to know I can summarize it basically by saying, be more like Gunit Monga. I mean, I'm a bit of a fanboy of Gunit because she has done what many people in India talk about, but don't actually do. And I see more of Gunit on the Croisette in Cannes than I do actually when I'm in India, because she takes the show on the road. So first of all, she's completely right. You have to go out there. It's boots on the ground. If you're not out there at the markets, if you're not, and I accept that right now that's obviously difficult. So thank you, Vicky, for making this possible. You have to be out there talking to people and making deals and making connections. That's one thing. But the other thing, which I think is a structural issue, she talked a lot about story structure, about the Sundance support, and about labs. One thing, in my experience, both in film and television, India does not spend enough time on scripts. In the West, sometimes too much, and I'm in the process of doing this right now, we hammer away at scripts. We chew them up, we spit them out, we rewrite them, and we try not to make them until we're completely ready. We've sort of stress tested it to destruction. Too many films, I think, in India get made. And as I thought about this question, I thought about why have some broadcasters, some countries been successful, for example, in the streaming market. Your own Germany, for example. Spain's another very good example. I'm very much enjoying Casa de Papel, the money heist in English at the moment. And the reason for that, and the reason for so much British success, is there's a tradition of development. So I think that's the key thing, that we need to, it's very hard to persuade an Indian financier to fund development. That's not a model that we understand, though. Gunit, I see you're burning to come in, so let me yield the floor to you.
I do want to say that, because we are a 100% equity driven market, there's so many films getting made and it's completely made with 100% equity. I think that is why the structure is so important for films to travel. And yes, in India, we do need more producers. We do need more creative producers. There is a complete breakdown of how Indian market works and how markets work outside India, where in US and producers play such a significant role in development, in execution, and in taking the film far, publicity, sales. Here, with all actors and directors turning into producers and being funded with equity, it is kind of a system that they cannot do everything, and that's why a role of a creative producer is so significant here, and it's marginalized in India.
Colin, you wanted to go on?
Listen, I could talk for the rest of the hour about my experience with this and my thoughts, but I feel that there is an hour ahead of us. So let me let some other folks step in, and I'm happy to come back on that if you want me to.
Okay, then let's come to Francesca. Francesca Mano is an expert IP lawyer, producer, co-producer, and sales expert, and she has served in her former life as a top executive at a prominent Italian film company, with being involved in financing, distribution, international sales, and acquisitions of more than 400 films. And for a couple of years, you have founded the sales company Summerside Media. So in this year's portfolio, you do not have any Indian films in your portfolio, although you have a love for India and you're well connected. So with an output, and Gunnar says that, with so many films, I think it's 1,500 or more than 1,500 films a year coming from India. You have not found a single film which you would like to put in the window of your sales store?
Thanks, Stephan. First of all, I would like to thank you, Vicky, for the invitation, and I'm honored to be part of the panel with such brilliant colleagues from everywhere. So actually, when I received the invitation from Vicky to attend the panel, I said, wow, I don't have any Indian content in my slate. I mean, what kind of added value I can bring to the panel? And then I said, maybe I can just bring my experience in selling foreign films. What can I tell? We are looking, Summerside Media is a quite young company because we launched the company 5 years ago, and we are looking for specific genres of films. We have a precise editorial line, and of course we give attention to first-time directors and emerging filmmakers, so that could be also interesting for us to explore the Indian market more, actually. But the point is that I read on a data and research website that almost 1,800 films are produced by India every year. So it's a huge number. And I think the reason why we still not find the right content for our editorial line, it's because of this incredible production, and perhaps the difficulty is to find the independent producer bringing the right content. I mean, I really need to understand how to connect with the producers doing what we are looking for. So we are exploring, of course, the Indian market, and we know that the Bollywood titles are more commercial, according to, I mean, compared to what we do. We mainly promote art house films, so we have a precise selling. We have also to care a lot about the selling points of the film we select. And of course, I agree with Gunit and also with Colin. We should consider more the script and development phase. So it's an important topic, of course. But the point is that also India, I mean, Hindi language is the main language, but India has a lot of local languages as well. So in terms of export, I mean, this can be an issue for us to find the proper content. Well, the global story, of course, must be a story that cannot talk to the local audiences only. I mean, we look for global stories, and the dubbing in foreign territories is also an issue. We have buyer and distributors buying also foreign titles, like very small films from, let's say, Finland or other territories from Europe or from the rest of the world. But distributors sometimes need to dub the content. So we have to find the right package, the right formula for the films that we acquire. With India, I can say that we never, we are exploring the market, but we had no chance to evaluate something good for us yet, but because we have no connection with producers yet.
Anna, you told me in our preparation talk that you have also the difficulty to find out the right partners. But let me first give you a short introduction of your person for all the people who are watching. So Anna has produced more than 20 award-winning international co-productions with Harmony Lessons. She has won a Berlinale Silver Bear for the best cinematography. Her company Tandem Production is based in Germany, Kazakhstan, and Russia. At the same time, Anna is a chief advisor at the Kazakh Cinema Center, which is the main film body in Kazakhstan, and has founded and curated many international film business and training events. So, yeah, Anna, what is your perspective on it? So, what are you feel is missing when it comes to, because it also, it's difficult to get an overview what is there and to find the right partners. Tell us, what do you think?
Hello, everybody. And first of all, thank you. I'm actually a big fan of India. I spent a lot of time in India in my life, and I'm happy to be here on this panel. I try to go to some Indian festivals every year. And in this case, I represent probably 2 countries, I think, on this panel, because I have many hats. But I would say that Russia, which is a big market today, and Kazakhstan, a smaller market, but still getting more and more important, have a very big tradition of watching Indian films. And you would be amazed, but till now, it's still a very important percentage of the films that a bigger audience watch. So it's actually a very, very commercial product for these countries. There are still, I think, in terms of television watching, like for films and for TV series, it's still a very big number. Over 50% of households still like Indian films. So, but it's getting lower for some reasons. For example, in Kazakhstan, I know that over some years there were companies distributing Indian films, and they unfortunately closed now. So I actually, when I got the invitation to this panel, I called them and I tried to ask what was going wrong, what's the communication issue in this case. So some of the things we're saying that, for example, I mean, you would know better, Gunit, for example, that the films are very long. This was a big issue for the Kazakh and Russian. And I'm sure there are other films. I mean, I'm sure there are other films that would match the expectations much better. That's what Francesca was saying. And this coming to your question is that I think as a producer, and I get a lot of information about markets and events happening in India, but sometimes it's very complicated to understand which one is really oriented towards international audience. Because, for example, I know this kind of people like Gunit, so if I have a question about India, I would talk to her. But still, I know that it's a huge number of 1,500, 1,800 films per year. So sometimes it's difficult to really find right partners because of the communications of some events. And I know that I get a lot of emails from time to time, you know, and they tell me that this is the biggest event and this is the most international one. So I think that it would be easier for international producers like me and like my colleagues to have maybe 1 or 2 bigger events like we have in France or in Germany, where we know, okay, this event unites most of the people who are interested in working internationally. Because I'm very, you know, much aware that India has a very huge local market, and I think it's working pretty well. But there's still lots who want to work internationally, so they have to kind of probably get together in some event that will be representative for everybody outside. For example, also, you know, since I run all the international strategy now for the Kazakh Cinema Center, I would like to say a few words about this, because this is a new initiative. Kazakhstan is a kind of a new country on the world scene in terms of co-productions, and since 1 year there was a film law about it. So now basically Kazakhstan is really open to co-productions and bringing foreign shoots to Kazakhstan. It's a 30% tax rebates, working really clearly and quite easy to get all this information. And my team would be the one to talk about this. And I know that the first companies, I'm telling all this because the first companies to come to me willing to shoot in Kazakhstan, willing to co-produce in Kazakhstan, were Indian companies. We have already over 10, in a short period of time, over 10 companies which approached me, and we started developing something together. So also last year, I think already 2 films shot in Kazakhstan, because I know you're looking for new locations, etc. The prices are quite low and the teams are quite friendly. So actually, it's not a bad experience. It's rather a good experience between Kazakhstan and India at the moment. And for Russia, I would say it would be the same. Russia is opening now. It's created a new fund for minority co-productions for all countries, and is really looking for partners from all around the world. And Russia is, of course, probably a very interesting market because it's a huge market. So, and it is a huge tradition of watching Indian films. Yes.
Thank you so much. I think we will come back later to the question or to the topic of co-productions. But first, I would like to give Ganesh a chance to bring in his expertise, because he is representing one of the biggest production companies who has a worldwide network of companies who are, I think, in almost every corner of the world. And Ganesh, let me introduce him. Ganesh Rajaram is currently General Manager, Executive Vice President at Fremantle International, based in Singapore. Ganesh oversees the Asian distribution, the foreign licensing business, and the digital business of Fremantle. Fremantle is well known for such formats in the Indian market, such as Indian Got Talent or X Factor, or global dramas like My Brilliant Friend, American Gods, or the Young Pope franchise. So Ganesh, tell us, so far your company is well known for that format business in television, but I heard that you have also plans to step in to start with original productions in India. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, so firstly, Stephan, thank you and Vicky for having me on this panel, and it's a real privilege to be amongst all these great people and experts from the industry. So I'll try and sound as intelligent as I can be. So essentially, I think you're right. I think the tradition and history of Fremantle has always been in unscripted entertainment. So whether it's Kazakhstan Idol or Indian Idol or China's Got Talent, that's what we're really known for in terms of unscripted. But about 6 or 7 years ago, we realized that scripted and dramas in particular, particularly for high-end VOD platforms and cable, was something that we had to get into, because the future of the industry was changing in a sense that linear platforms were coexisting with SVOD platforms. And when you have scripted shows, they tend to sit and have a longer shelf life on SVOD platforms than your reality entertainment show. So it was a strategic decision. So with the backing of our parent company, Bertelsmann, there was a lot of investment into scripted concepts. And the strategy was really to identify scripted production companies globally that we could form alliances with, and then have a pipeline that we could take international. And through that, I think just historically, some of the biggest successes have come from Italy with Wildsight, which is a company that we co-own. And out of that relationship, we've introduced shows like The Young Pope, The New Pope, and as well as My Brilliant Friend globally. And that strategically is how we approach scripted drama, where we form alliances and explore opportunities in various territories. And India, obviously we have tremendous success in India with our non-scripted entities. And a couple of years ago, the strategy was put in place to see what can we do in the scripted space in India. And again, it's about, to borrow Guneet and Colin's, it's about storytelling. It's about finding the right stories that come out of these countries, because we're very, very assured that the best stories from a particular country come from the people themselves, rather than us trying to manufacture stories out of there. But again, I think what we lend to the equation is the expertise in script development, which is something that is really needed if you're going to take the show international. And then obviously with the equity partners from different pre-sales or even commissioning that would make the show a global show in terms of production budgets and scale. So we haven't actually embarked with our local office in India on a project. We are looking at a couple of projects right now. And one of it is actually optioning a book and trying to see if we can find the right partners to do it. Our experience in working in India on a particular project, I think dates about 2 years ago when we did Gurinder Chadha. We have a first look deal with, which is Gurinder Chadha's production company. And we did a show called Beecham House for ITV in the UK. So it was a 6-hour drama, which we had a lot of hopes for. We hoped that it would be a returning series. Unfortunately, it was just a 1 6-hour show. And it was essentially shot in Rajasthan and as well as in Ealing Studios in the UK. Interesting note about that show is I subsequently sold it back to Netflix in India for their premiere. So it's shows like that and story ideas which we think that potentially could travel, because Beecham House, although it didn't get recommissioned for a second season in the UK, we've sold it quite extensively globally, internationally, to quite a lot of platforms and linear platforms. So the idea is to form alliances with partners within India for projects which they can bring to us, or we may have an option on a show or a story that we want to take to the market. And our Indian office is actively trying now to look at projects that we can greenlight out of India and we can take international. And the reason we are optimistic is that if you take a show like My Brilliant Friend, which is an Italian show, what we're realizing right now is if you have a good story, it doesn't necessarily matter anymore whether the show is in English to reach as many markets as possible. Because HBO, My Brilliant Friend was the first Italian show in Italian language to actually be run on HBO America. And in China, I actually had a bidding war for the show because the story was such a great story that people appreciated, you know, the coming of age of these two girls and their friendship throughout generations. It was just such a wholesome, pure story that people just wanted to watch. So to your point, Stephan, we are very, very interested in doing more in India with scripted, because I think that is the future. Because you know, the best place to take stories out of is from the country where they are the best storytellers that will know about their market.
Yeah, Ganesh, thank you so much. I think we will go on that path later. But first, I would like to give Alan a chance also to say something. Otherwise, he has a feeling that he get lost here. Alan, let me introduce you. Alan, your films have won awards in Cannes and Venice with nominations in Berlin, Toronto, and Busan. In your former life, you have been a software entrepreneur. With White Rabbit, now you combine your two careers, the one of a filmmaker and a producer, and the one of a software expert, offering independent digital distribution with peer-to-peer and blockchain technology. So first of all, maybe you can give us a very, very short, precise introduction in what this is about, and also how you can help bringing Indian content to global customers, and if so, how it works and what the business model is. Alan, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Stephan. And thank you for having me here, of course. I look forward to be invited to India in the near future. And it's 10 years since I've been there, so it's about time to revisit. So yes, I want to in two parts. One part is a public good that we're creating for producers. As we see the market now, it's being dominated by tech companies. And these tech companies have their modeling ecosystems of content and owning the IP which is within those ecosystems. As an independent producer, I have no ambition so far in my life to become a line producer for a tech company. I believe in the virtue of independent voices and independent cinema. And so it's been very important for me to build a platform that I can believe in, or a system that I can believe in where I can remain an independent producer. So the public good that we are building is a public good to ensure that our films can remain an independent digital product. To do that, you have to put three things together. One is the film itself. The second is the chain of title, ensuring that the ownership of that film is verified and immutable. And the third thing is execution of waterfalls from digital transactions. And by putting these three things together into one product, you turn the tables whereby you're not going to a tech company saying, hi, can you take my film? Does it fit for your ecosystem and your ambitions for your ecosystem? You are instead saying, I have now a digital product that can be released worldwide in any market. What can you offer me as a tech company to ensure the proper distribution of my film? And all the transactions of that film, no matter where it's spread around in the world, will automatically go to the waterfall and be executed to all of the investors and participants of the waterfall. So we're now actually competing on a much more transparent level for investors in our films, to say that that every single transaction you receive to this film will be not only transparent, but also paid directly to you as an investor, or you as the producer, or you as the director or investor of the film. So it's turning the table on creating our films into digital products, and that does not exclude cinema either, just to have that said. So that is being created now as with a number of European producers, and among them Haute in France, K5, Libero, and we are very hoping that we can embrace a bigger producer, international producer collegiate, to build this technology for independent producers to maintain independent distribution of film. So that is the public good, free for all producers. On the other hand, commercial product that we have built, whereby I, as a producer, even despite a few successes in Cannes and also even sold to every territory, I wasn't getting any information on who's watching my film, how many people are watching my film, no transparency on the payments. And as a Norwegian in Norway with a very small market, I could watch maybe 2 Almodovar films in this market. I am pretty sure I cannot watch very many Indian films in this market, despite the fact there's a massive Indian diaspora in Norway, thankfully, great food, which I'm very happy for, but that content I cannot watch. And so I went into the realities of peer-to-peer streaming, what we today call piracy. And of course, this is built on technology, which is the original internet, which was about sharing knowledge and art around the world, sharing scientific data, sharing books, ensuring that everyone has equal access to knowledge or entertainment and art. And what I found out is that the most people who stream peer-to-peer are actually paying customers frustrated that they can't get a hold of the content they want to watch. And there's about 6 or 7 studies since 2010 confirming this. EU studies, anti-piracy organizations, showing that 65 to 83% want to pay. So quite simply, I said, all right, if our films are not being sold in a territory, if there's a non-exclusive license, if Amazon or Netflix doesn't want it, why shouldn't I be able to distribute it around the world and people be able to pay? So we built a technology that is integrated in your browser, that recognizes the content that you stream and allows you to pay for it no matter where you watch it. So it's really creating a platform independent streaming and payment for film, and also encouraging people to create streaming sites, as many as they want, with whatever niche or specific genre or branding they want, and allowing people to find and discover the films, because we are a curious species and we are willing to dig into our interests. And I can certainly tell you that for Indian cinema, there is so much curiosity and interest about both the more Bollywood and also the more art house films of India, and there is no reason that we shouldn't make it as easy as possible for the audience to discover those, where they already discover them in a number which is 10 times larger than Netflix today, and that's peer-to-peer streaming.
Mm. Alan, it sounds all very exciting, but I think one thing is not solved in your thing, and I would like to give it to the producers here amongst us, or even also to Francesca. So who's financing the film? You want to bring on the table, and secondly, who's marketing the film? I don't know if anybody from the producers want to step in. Otherwise, Alan, you
answer that question.
Okay,
Right.
okay, please
go. No, but well, I mean, the financing, it becomes a much more interesting project because the numbers for, I'll take a very clear example. I just forgot the name of the film that won in Cannes, Killing of a Sacred Deer. So Killing of a Sacred Deer with Colin Farrell, among others, was distributed in the US, and in that window in ticket sales, it sold for $2.5 million. Within the 6-month window after the cinema release, it was streamed by 12 million people. Now, if each of those persons had paid $2, that film would have generated much more revenue from that streaming window than it would have done from its global ticket sales, and certainly 10 times more than its US box office. And it doesn't even exclude the box office window and cinema window at all. It respects that window because it's only the period after that window closed. So for the financiers who come into the project, you have full transparency on each single payment, and we're actually going to a market which is 10 times bigger than streaming, with a willing audience willing to pay. So as a investment object, to put it that cynically, the numbers stack up much more interestingly for peer-to-peer streaming.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anybody want to step in with a question or an answer? If not, then I have the next one.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, because still, Alan, one point from my perspective is not solved, because somebody has to finance first. Okay, for the projects who have already been financed and were ready-made, it's your platform, I guess, is perfect, and it's a good choice, I guess. But the first step has to be done somewhere else. Maybe Ganesh has to invest, or some of the big players, the television stations, the cinema chains, the distributors, whoever. Okay, I have a first question here from the audience, which comes from Anuba and goes to Gunit. Hi Gunit, you spoke about the visual language when marketing to a global audience, but who is the global audience here? I feel the Indian film industry's idea of global is the Western audience. So our films need to conform to their visual language in order to be accepted.
No, actually, thank you for the question. I would say, there are films that can travel but have not because of over years we have built distribution systems only to the Indian diaspora. So we haven't really built a culture where, how Fremantle has a whole pipeline of distribution that does not exist for as independent movie filmmakers. Like, I would say a film like English for English, I would say like a film like Tumbar, I've co-produced a film with Norway, What Will People Say? That was Norway's entry to the Academy last year. So there is so much to be done, at least in the independent world. There is, of course, one Bollywood, which has a pipeline of distribution figured, and movies released the same day globally for the entire diaspora. But beyond that is where a lunchbox existed. Beyond that is where, a Masan existed. So one needs to, and that's where, Francesca can support. That's where, that's an ecosystem that we need to tap into, and it cannot be done by the local distributor of the top few territories where there is an Indian market. So so there is a whole distribution mechanism that works, that functions, and it's a well-oiled machinery. But the minute that is not where you can fall into, you're not a big star vehicle, and or like I mean, I love a film like English. I did not produce it, but I did think that something like that will cross boundaries and will have the life of what a Lunchbox had, something like Kapoor and Sons. Now these are traditional films that have gone through a traditional distribution, and I feel like they can also expand and travel, like how so many Iranian films travel, or how so many Korean cinema travels. But we have unfortunately not built that pipeline in strength. One independent distributor, one independent producer like me, with my one-offs, I cannot build a pipeline. I'm not a studio. So it is step by step. So I think that is a film like Tumbar. I think it's very international. I think it'll travel in Europe. There are fans. It'll go to all the fantastic film festivals. There's a whole way of putting it out there. So I would say that there is a lot of very cool stuff that we are also doing, which is not making advantage of somebody like Francesca and putting it out there through different markets. Having said that, lines are also blurring with a Netflix, Amazon, and a global OTT platform now. So it's an ongoing conversation. I mean, if you make Bajrangi Bhaijaan without the songs, I think that'll travel. So it's a brilliant story. So, but there are these tropes that we do. There are these Bollywood formula that we have to do for the audience here. So one needs to, as a producer, you have to decide on which is your actor and how are you packaging and how are you releasing. You have to know those answers from the very go. You have to know where you're going and have early conversations with sales companies, have early conversations with distributors. I'm very excited about Fremantle because they have a global setup of distribution, and from ITV to Channel 4 to partnerships with BBC to globally, and that's what really can funnel into a film like English, a film like Masan. So those bridges yet need to be break. So there's a lot of opportunity.
If I can, I would say that Gunit said the right thing. I mean, I agree with her totally. And beside this, I think that also genre of the film must be very clear. I mean, sometimes we receive tons of hybrid genre, like dramedy, for example. It's not a drama, or black comedy. It's not an easy sell. I mean, if we focus more on a specific genre, and then of course we have to understand which is the right audience to target the film, and materials issue is also an important element for our choice. I mean, all the promotional and all the files of the film must be very, high definition. So everything is really a package of elements that we have to see when we select a film. And also, it was very interesting. I was having a look of the leading box office markets worldwide in 2019 by revenue, and according to Statista.com, which is a data and research website, it seems that still some European territories are out from the box office for the Indian films. I mean, I can find US, China, Japan, United Kingdom, South Korea, France, India, Germany, Mexico, Russia, Australia, Italy, and Brazil, but the rest of the world is out. So maybe
and that's not because there's not an audience. That's because there are gatekeepers not willing to take a chance on Indian cinema.
Yeah.
And I think that's the fascinating thing about looking at the numbers. Like you asked about, how do we finance a film? How do we evaluate whether it has a place in such a marketplace. There's a company called Synalytics in LA that uses peer-to-peer data, which is the biggest collection of data on streaming in the world, to determine whether these films have a right to be made or not in a financial perspective. And these numbers, these markets could be much better exploited, and our IP could be much better exploited by going to where the audience is, rather than keeping on forcing the audience to go where they don't want to be.
Yeah, you know, and when you look at like my experience with the Lunchbox, I would say that in 2014, we did around 4 million box office in US market, and Sony Picture Classic put out the movie. Until December, it was the highest foreign language film box office till PK came, and PK did straight 7.5, 8 million, right? And here we are figuring out that, okay, this is a pure Indian diaspora reach. And this, another Hindi film, is non-diaspora. You know, so we have a market threshold, but we have to marry them and we have to put them together. And that is the constant dots that need to be joined, which is a producer's role, you know, to be able to know that from the day-go.
And Francesca, I know Francesca has to go, but I think it was very interesting, some of the things she was saying early on, as a sales agent who hasn't worked with Indian. She has the perception, and we've talked about this before, that Bollywood is such a strong brand that you think of Indian cinema and us foreigners think of Bollywood. Now, anyone who knows Indian cinema knows there is a world of interesting stuff behind that, but you have to break through that to realize that actually there's interesting stuff going on. And then the technical issues of marketing materials and prints and all the rest of it. And brutally, India's not been fantastic at that in the past. That actually, though, is old news now. I mean, in India's digital infrastructure, you know, India owns most of the visual post-production houses now around the world. So but that's still a perception India has. And you know, organization like the NFDC, bless their little hearts, are promoting Indian cinema worldwide, but it's a very slow moving thing as we change our perceptions. But it's still on India to make films that the rest of the world want to see. And you know, algorithms and all the rest of it aside, Alan, if there are interesting projects, they will find an audience, but they need to be done and made in the first place.
And I think if I can just add, sorry, Alan, if I can just add, from a marketing and distribution perspective, and to Guneet's point, if you can take that example of English Winglish, right? The way they marketed it, you know, was just on Sri Devi. And that just completely, you missed the point. So when I watched that show with my wife, who's Chinese, you know, she absolutely loved it. She didn't know who was acting in it because the story was just absolutely brilliant. But the way the show was actually marketed, even across Asia, because of the Indian diaspora, was just on that star power, as it were. And you sort of lost so many different fields of audiences who would have absolutely, I think that anyone who watches the film would absolutely love it. So I think your point about distributing and marketing, it cannot be what we used to do maybe 6 or 7 years ago in your traditional sort of linear distribution and marketing, which is just based on star power, because I think the storytelling has to come to the front. And that would actually open up a lot more avenues and windows and platforms for you to place the show. So I think it's a really valid point.
Just to add, English Winglish was marketed in Germany as Indisch for Anfänger, or Indisch for beginner, Indian for beginner, because we had a very successful TV series which was Turkish for beginners. So that,
well, it's okay. Also, sorry, Anna, go on.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, about algorithms. Algorithms are no tastemakers. Algorithms end up having different agendas, all according to which algorithm you're using. I could say here in Norway, for example, Netflix's algorithm excluded every non-regional Netflix content and suggested no Norwegian films to a Norwegian audience, which is a worrying trend. So for me, what we're trying to do with we're not creating a platform that decides, an algorithm that decides what you should watch. We are very much looking for influencers to create streaming pages, people with taste, critics, distributors, sales agents. You know, Match Factory has a fantastic lineup. Why should they not also be streaming films? And the problem is that we are, instead of taking responsibility for that distribution ourselves and audience, also WordNet moves very quickly. Films like, for example, Roma, just I'll take one example, was watched by around 15 million people on Netflix and over 60 million on peer-to-peer streaming. That's because the people had the taste and want to watch that film, but they weren't interested in Netflix. So I think we're limiting ourselves by putting ourselves in a position where we can only finance and distribute our films through a few tech companies. I think that is a jail that you have to break out, that we have to break out of quickly as independent.
I do think a pipeline of content needs to be stable while we tackle marketing and distribution. So current given structure of only equity financing, and those have, because it's 100% equity, those have a clear distribution platform, this much from satellite, this much from, and then you're out, So there is, to solve long tail, I mean, like Jason Blum does, or like, one needs to firstly have a broader vision of, let's say we'll put 10 films a year through the pipeline. And then in 5 years, you see the impact of it, It won't happen with one-offs. You will have one-off spike, you'll have one-off spike and a broken system.
And the other problem with equity funding, it comes back to Ganesh had made the point about how English Fingers was marketed with Sridevi. And indeed, actually, Roma, Alan, is an example of the opposite of this. Is if you're an Indian investor, you want to put your money into something guaranteed. So you want to put your money into a star-driven vehicle. And we all know the choke point of those star-driven vehicles. We in the West don't care. I mean, I know who Amir Khan is, but nobody else going to the cinema in the UK does. So when you've got a system that is driven on selling it because of it's a star, which works beautifully in India, it falls completely. So you come back to the fact, as a mantra I've repeated endlessly to the great indifference of the Indian public, the story is the star. And that's why Guneet's film, Lunchbox, works so well. Although, of course, she was smart and she hedged her bets with the late, great Irfan Khan, who was one of the few Indian who, although not one of the top Khans in India, for us is a much better known Indian actor. So we had an entry level into that. So she has sort of had her cake and eat it. But that's another problem with Indian content going global. It relies on the wrong trigger points for us audiences.
And then how do you do it again? I was not able to do it again. And because it's very challenging, because to make people understand here and make investors understand here that this is going to be exploited around the world and the money starts coming in 3 years later, was a very tough challenge. And as an independent producer, I was unable to foresee that, because it was the first time happening. So the disadvantages of first mover have also been very severe, while I have always noticed that what we do works with the European system, works with the US indie system of breaking out at festivals, of traveling. I mean, having had more than 7 films in Cannes and more than 10 films in Toronto and, Venice, Sundance, it's still not a studio looking at it. The challenges of being independent and then relying on an equity driven market is very challenging, because then you're relying on the paycheck and not like a government support or somebody with support for next 10 years. Let's change this, let's build this. You're not done in one transaction.
I can comfort you with the fact that the payments done through the system we've built takes 3 seconds to reach every single rights holder and investor, and of course that is.
About 2014, there was no Netflix, Amazon in India,
No.
And also in 2013, 14, I was able to cut up Gangs of Wasseypur and sell it as an 8-part episode to Netflix US. Tried doing all these structures to get Indian content out there, and it was kind of the first mini series, in a US market for Netflix US as an 8-parter. And anybody who's seen Gangs of Wasseypur, it's, it was a cool structure to pull off. So those are all, what I mean by structure, what I mean by putting content out there creatively. I mean, an India-French co-production treaty was signed in 1985. I was the first one to use it in 2012. So we have a long way to, make this sustainable, to make it sustainable. So yeah.
Maybe we can create something new. If Anna, you are on mute, so Anna, we can't hear you, Anna. You're on mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Okay. No, because I wanted to add something from the outsider's point of view, which is very important what you're talking about right now, because in the question itself that Gunit was actually answering right now, that this very important perspective of producers, it's not only in India, it's in other countries, that people say we have to adjust to some agenda that is expected from us outside, for example, in Europe. And I'm always facing what Gunit just said. Yes, she used this treaty for the first time, and it's happening in many countries. Producers, for some reason, they think they have to adjust their topics, their stories, to what is actually watched in Europe, which is absolutely the opposite, I think. And I'm sure that, for example, audiences in Russia or in Kazakhstan, talking about this territory, is looking for projects that are actually purely Indian, that are telling Indian stories with Indian culture and everything. It just has to be marketed a little bit different. And maybe also we wanted to come back to co-productions. When you do co-productions, you can co-produce a purely Indian film, but you have a co-producer from another country that treats it a little bit, that like you develop it together, and it helps, or also, it gives you like the way how you market it within the country, how you distribute it. So in this way, the co-production is extremely important, extremely interested. And I just want to say it again, it's the opposite of adjusting the story. The story has to be very original and authentic. I think this is what people are looking for.
Yeah, the problem with gatekeepers and equity funding is always that you have to bring something totally new. Nobody has seen, nobody has heard before. But how can you market it? You can't give examples then, because the examples would be that you do something what has been done before. So, Colin, you wanted to say something.
And you have to be brave.
Stephan, I have to leave, unfortunately. So.
Okay, Alan, thank you so much. I have one question also here from the audience. But Colin, you wanted to say something?
No, but I've of course plenty to say, but I see Francesca, I know you need to go and pick up your daughter.
Yeah.
Okay, let me put in the question from the audience. Gaurav Saxena is asking, there's a search of funding for independent Indian films in India. Foreign funds, economics demand a substantial budget, which isn't realistic for small, truly independent regional films. On top of that, there are only a handful of independent producers. How and where can Indian independent regional director-producer find access to development funds? Maybe Gunit.
So this is an equity market. Bye, Francesca. We totally understand you have to go. Please take care. See you. Thank you, guys. Considering that this is an equity-driven market, so the reason there are advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that 1,500 films get made because it's, everybody has access to structured, unstructured, new money, equity. So you have to hustle and find that equity person who is interested in you and prove your merit, but you can also apply to labs. You can also apply to Tribeca, Sundance, Torino, pick up some steam on your project, to be discovered. Attend Mami, the Mumbai Film Festival, attend the Goa Film Bazaar. I've built a career attending Goa Film Bazaar. It is amazing because that is one place where everybody interested in India comes, and you can start then having a conversation from there. I've gone there every year since 2008. So, so you have to keep trying to build that before you just say, why can't I get development money? You have to put in that effort because there is no government support here. There is not somewhere that you can apply for development money. So it is equity, and anybody you take it from, your dad or an investor, you will need to return that money with a certain interest and have a solid business plan. And that comes with time, So for your first project, apply to labs, put yourself out there. There's Film Independent, there's so much support around the world. And Film Independent is focusing right now on Southeast Asia countries. So yeah.
Yeah, and Film Bazaar and Goa is a great lab. So all the big projects coming out came from there.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to add something? Then.
Well, only to say that listening to Guneet and the equity model, I often, as a European producer, sit here thinking there's too much soft money in Europe and it doesn't drive us commercially focused. But I'm not feeling quite so bad now. I'm feeling a little bit happier about our model. So thank you for that, Guneet.
Yeah, there are advantages and disadvantages. I mean, here there are people who can make 3 films in a year, and there you make, with application process and funding process, maybe 1 film in 3 years. There are clear advantages and disadvantages. Here, I mean, you're up for really extreme cases because it's someone's money that you have to return, So all the thought process is driven very commercially. So it's driven to answer the questions, and that impacts the storyline, that impacts the decisions we make, that impacts the casting, that impacts distribution,
Well, I think, I mean, listen, we all know the Indian film market, and indeed India has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. And we've talked a lot on panels in the past about the need for a subsidy to attract inward investment. And that seems to be happening now. So the next stage of that is to mature the market to the point where something like the National Film Development Corporation is acting like the BFI, for example, in the UK, or the many French support or Italian, where they are taking that long view that Guneet is talking about, where they accept that it's part of the soft power of a country, part of the country's cultural texture, and that will go into supporting local.
I do think that there should be support system for first time. There has to be an ecosystem and support system. You've done your round of getting through the gate. Then there are studios, and there is a complete roadmap and equity funding available. But like when Francesca, somebody from Europe and a sales company or a production house says, we focus on first time directors, because there is support system there. So it's always very hard, and that's why the above threshold is very small. I think there absolutely needs to be more support system for more and more people to be able to have access to development, to have access to a structured space which can be an incubator, in the VC world. So I think that is absolutely need of the hour in India.
Now, this is exactly also what I wanted to add here, because it's not having at all the state support system is also like what we started with. It's a little bit complicated for international producers who doesn't know India so well, and you have to go and work with private equity, which is sometimes complicated. Like, for example, in Russia, and I'm not saying it's the best system ever, but we do have a state support from different funds now, like that really have calls, and the system is established in a way that is done in Europe, and there's still a lot of private equity. So when you combine this, and especially, of course, when you want to support young directors, first-time directors, art house films, it's very complicated to find, let's say, for an art house film from India, to find equity money in Russia or outside of Russia. Yeah, so of course it's much more stable. I know for any also German fund or French fund, when you know that there is some state support behind the film. That's very also, I think, a very important issue for this.
Yeah, the good news is that now there are more buyers in India. With the OTT platforms coming in, with digital coming in, the good news is that now there are more buyers. You can. I've been at a part.
So let's do a co-production.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done a lot of them, and they've always been encouraging, and I'm a huge supporter of co-productions.
Yeah, but not only co-production. So we have Ganesh from Fremantle. So he has also offered his advice and to step in as a financer if it's a good project. So I think, I think we slowly should come to an end. Thank you so much, everybody on the panel. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Guneet. Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you, Colin. And yeah, we will go on and hopefully find the next lunchbox or the next Beecham House or whatever product which will entertain and bring good content to global markets from India to all over the world. And thank you so much for this wonderful panel.